How Sarah got her wings has some good moments, and in general, scene by scene, I enjoyed it. But there were two really bad decisions, one of which I completely disagree with, one of which I can kind of see what they were doing, but they didn't do it right. They didn't do it in a way that was convincing or believable. Both of those were spoilers. Well, one of them's a big spoiler, so I'll save that one for the end. The other one, not really a spoiler, so I'll talk a little bit about that first. The film itself was released in 2015. It's directed by Edmund Entin and Gerry Entin. It's written by Damon Hill, and we have a cast including Lindsey Gort as Sarah. And at the beginning of the film, Sarah is volunteering, and this homeless individual is looking for his dog. And the dog has run out of the building. So Sarah goes to find the dog, and as she picks up the dog and turns around, she's smacked by a bus. And the next thing we know, she's in the lobby, the waiting room, at the gates of heaven. I have to say, beautiful space, really nice set design, very brightly lit, very eye-catching. And Sarah is clearly a very good person. And she even lists off all of these good things that she's done with her life. She clearly spends a lot of time doing things for other people. So why can't she get into heaven? That's the bit that makes zero sense. At the end, I'll give a spoiler warning and I will tell you the explanation that they gave at the very end, but I won't say just now. And on the one hand, I think the explanation is a good one, but at the same time, I don't agree with the message and I don't agree with the treatment of Sarah. She is clearly a hard-working individual who does a lot for other people, dedicates a lot of her time for others, and that's not good enough. And I don't agree with that, but I'll expand more on that at the end when I talk about that and the other thing that I think were terrible decisions. Sarah then goes back to Earth and has to try and find out what it is that she needs to do to get through the gates of heaven, and most of it revolves around her spending time with an ex. And this is a character called Jordan. He's played by Theler, and he can see her. And he knows that she's dead. We find out that a certain amount of time has passed since Sarah went to the gates of heaven, because she'd already had her funeral by that point. And he knows that she's dead, but he can see her. So obviously he's aware that they see she's an angel. It's not in my belief that you become an angel when you die. You become a spirit or you return to spirit. So that's against my belief, but it doesn't bother me. I don't care if films want to say that when you die, you become an angel, even though it's not my belief. I don't mind it. Doesn't bother me. But that's just worth bearing in mind. Not everybody's going to be in agreement with that. And it might bother some people more than others. Personally, I don't care. It doesn't affect the message at all. Not that I love the message. And Sarah spends time with him trying to work out what it is, and I'll say no more than that, at least for now. There are some positives. Sarah is a very likeable character. Jordan's a very likeable character. On screen, they work really well together. It's a little funny. It's not a funny film necessarily, but there are times when it's a little comical because, for example, Jordan will hug Sarah, and then Jordan's friend will come into the room, and of course he can't see Sarah, so he can just see Jordan kind of hugging the air. And this happens a couple of times. They don't overdo it. I think it only happened maybe 3 times possibly, but just little things like that really help to lift the mood, because it is obviously quite a heavy subject. Somebody's just died and now they're stuck in purgatory until they work out what to do next. It's quite heavy stuff, but we do have little bits of comedy that keep things moving. Also, let's not kill off the dog in the opening scene. That broke my heart. So it is quite heavy. As I said before, it is beautifully lit, not just in the lobby, but the entire film. I thought the lighting was brilliant. We have some scenes that are maybe slightly more dimly lit, but in those scenes we have a lot of Christmas lights or twinkly lights, and it's really, really beautiful. So visually it's really appealing. Sarah's costumes, the colours that she wears really stand out, and it looks really great. The sound is great, the music is great. Considering this is set just before Christmas, we do have some festive aspects. It's definitely not the most festive film, but it certainly is a very spiritual film. And other than the fact that I don't personally believe that people become angels, rather they just return to spirit, it does generally line up with my personal beliefs. Apart from Sarah's mission as a whole, which I'll talk about in a second. So do I like this film? For the most part, yes. As I said, there were 2 decisions they made that I really think were terrible decisions, and I will expand on those in a second, one of which I touched upon lightly. But even though I think they're huge errors, it didn't affect my overall enjoyment. I still liked the process. I liked the characters. I liked the pacing. I liked the appearance of the film. And in general, I'm still happy to recommend it. So if it sounds like your kind of narrative, and I have to say, it's 100% is my kind of story. Any story that involves somebody dying and coming back to Earth, I absolutely will lap up completely. That also means that I have certain expectations for what I like, but I'm also kind of easily pleased. But with this one, I guess, in general, I am easily pleased, apart from the 2 things that I'm now going to mention. So yes, if it sounds like it would appeal to you, check it out. Generally, a really good film, apart from these 2 things. So I will now explain them, and these are big spoilers. One's a much bigger spoiler than the other. By which I mean, I will tell you what happens in the last minute, but they're both pretty big spoilers. And the first one is that Sarah's mission is ultimately that she has to act out of pure love. And I don't agree with this, because they're basically saying Sarah did all of those good deeds in her life. She dedicated so much time to other people, but because she was doing it for personal reasons, to feel good about herself, that wasn't good enough, and that's not going to get you into heaven. I 100% disagree with that. I think that's a very bad message. Sarah was eventually on the list to get into heaven because she ultimately did something nice for other people, not for selfish reasons, because at this point she thought she wasn't going to get into heaven because time had run out, yet she still helped people because it was a kind thing to do. And yes, I do like that message. I think helping people, not just for selfish reasons, is really important. But the film is basically saying, well, you helped people, but it was because you wanted to feel good about yourself, not because it was a selfless act. So you're not getting into heaven. That's not good enough for heaven. And that's not the case. I mean, some people might believe that, but they're basically saying, don't bother doing good deeds if you're going to do it for selfish reasons or for personal gain, because you're not going to get into heaven. And I think that that's a really disgusting attitude to have. It doesn't matter what somebody's motivation is. I don't think the homeless person on the street who you're about to give a hot meal to is going to care less whether you're helping them because they need help or because you'll feel good about it. I don't think anybody who needs help is going to care why you're able to help them or why you're motivated to help them. And also, dedicating your time to somebody else, even if it's for selfish reasons or personal gain, that's still your time. And you're giving that time to somebody else. So I'm completely 100% against the message of the film. It would have made so much more sense if Sarah had not been a good person. If she had been selfish. And we do get little glimmers throughout the film of times when she'd maybe made judgments or decisions based purely on her own wants and needs. But at the same time, she did so much for other people. And that's what should be focused on. And they should have just made her selfish completely. They should have made her ignorant to people in need. And it would have actually made sense. And it would have been a believable story. Unfortunately, the last minute, 2 minutes, not believable either. Because Sarah pointed out, and I think this is quite a true statement, I would imagine, I've never died, but she said that it took her dying to realise that she wanted to live and to realise what living was about, which I think is a powerful statement. And I guess we do hear of people having near-death experiences, and that's the wake-up. That's when they realise that they want to live and what their life should be about. So I believe that. But then, Sarah decided she wanted to live, so guess what? We're going to undo everything in terms of the timeline and make it that the bus doesn't hit her, and she's alive. She lived after all. So that was really stupid. Also bearing in mind, the dog had already passed through the gates of heaven. It was a really heartbreaking scene. The opening scene, after she got hit by the bus, Sarah wasn't allowed through the gates of heaven, but the little doggy ran through the little doggy gate, which broke my heart. And then, let's just claw the dog back from heaven. and make it that Sarah never got hit. So that didn't make any sense. And I think it was a really terrible ending. It made zero sense. It's completely unbelievable. But if they'd done something slightly different, it could have made sense. If she'd woken up in a coma, so she'd been hit by the bus, and everything that unfolded afterwards was a spiritual dream, or, depending on what your belief is, her spirit did go to the gates of heaven, but it wasn't her time yet, and she had these lessons to learn before her spirit could return to her body and she'd come out of the coma. Depending on what your beliefs are, that might not be practical or make sense. To me, that would be a viable, believable ending, and it would give her the chance to wake up and continue her life rather than just, standing in front of where the bus was. Illogical. But actually making it so that she could have been in a coma and having this experience to then take those lessons back to Earth and get a second chance at living a life that she wants to and living a life that she'd be proud of when her time eventually does come. And unfortunately, they just didn't think of that, and they thought that their ending made sense, and it doesn't. It's utterly terrible. So the two decisions they made, Sarah's mission, basically overriding every good deed she'd ever done, disgusting and not accurate, I would be really hard-pressed to find somebody who is spiritual, who believes that good deeds of any nature are a bad thing, because that's basically what they were saying. Well, you helped these people, but not for the right reasons, so it doesn't matter. Absolutely disgusting attitude. And then bringing her back to life at the end made zero sense. If they'd just thought a teeny tiny bit about it and given her a situation such as a coma, or maybe even unconscious on the floor for a brief second. Maybe she jumped out of the way, hit her head, was unconscious. Timelines in the spirit world are not linear the way they are for us. Again, personal beliefs. But she wouldn't have to have been out for very long to have that entire experience. Kind of like how dreams seem to last a very long time, yet no time has passed at all. And that would have made sense. And if they just thought a little bit about what they were doing, they could have made an ending that actually was believable and meaningful. And instead, the last 2 minutes were utter trash. Rest of the film, actually pretty good. Needless to say, I'm quite passionate about this because this is a topic about which, well, I am very passionate. I am very spiritual. So this kind of thing I think about honestly on a daily basis. So yes, I have a lot of opinions. Yes, I have a lot of expectations. And the messages in this are just completely flawed. Obviously, the message of doing good because it's the right thing to do rather than personal gain, that's a good message. But telling people that their good deeds count for nothing and are not going to get you into heaven because they have a selfish undertone, it doesn't matter. If I'm in need and somebody wants to help me, I don't care if they're doing it because they'll get some personal gratification. There's an episode of Friends dedicated to the concept of whether there's such a thing as a selfless good deed, and let's be fair, there really isn't, because doing a good deed always has at least the aspect of a person feeling good that they've done good. So really horrendous messages, really disgusting messages actually, and an utterly terrible ending. But the rest of the film I enjoyed. How Sarah got her wings has a lot of room for improvement with those specific moments. I think they got those two really significant aspects completely wrong. But the rest of it, I really rather enjoyed it.